Hi, Cindy here. I am going to make a chicken pot pie for supper tonight, and I'm going to make actually more than one. I'm going to make a few meals in a jar of exactly the recipe that I'm making. So come and join me. It'll be real quick. Okay, so I've got everything all ready, so it should be fairly quick. I'm gonna actually just put that down there so you can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna just turn the heat on. I've got a little bit of butter there. Okay, so while I'm doing this, I will walk you through how I did this, which is just a few minutes ago, in the interest of time. So what I've got in here, I've got the powder, and then I've got my ingredients. I'm gonna go through them one by one. And when you make up this, whatever you do with your meal in a jar, you would just add this to 6 cups of water, and your meal is, that's it. That's all you have to do is 6 cups of water, make it into a soup with 6 cups of water. If you wanted to add about maybe 4 or 5 cups of water, then you would make a chicken pot pie that you'd put in the oven. I'm gonna actually do that tonight. So I'm gonna start with a little bit of butter here. Obviously, when I cook up this, I'm not using this kind of butter, but I do have butter in there. So the first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna saute my onions. So these are chopped onions, freeze-dried, because that's the easiest thing in the world. So freeze-dried onions, and I've got 2 tablespoons of carrots. Now these are, that's kind of quick there. These are not freeze-dried, they're dehydrated. So I'm gonna give them a little bit of a head start because they take a little bit longer. And I'm putting the onions in now because I like the onions to be toasted. And I'm gonna put a little bit of garlic in. This is freeze-dried garlic too. I forgot to put it in the meal in a jar, and you can use whatever garlic you want, but for the meal in a jar, either garlic powder or freeze-dried garlic, and I don't use garlic powder anymore. But anyway, so I'm just gonna toast this lightly, and then I will explain, I'll go down to the next step, but I wanna get this melted and toasted. Put just a little bit of water in so that those carrots can be refreshing while I'm doing the next step. Okay, so all of the butter is kind of absorbed in those onions and garlic. That's what I want. Give it a couple minutes. And I'm going to use, so I have some velouté, and velouté is just a fancy way of saying chicken gravy. So if you've got that velouté, then lucky you. If you don't have that velouté, then I do have a recipe for a white sauce. I'll put a link below this so that you can use your own white sauce if you want. It's so handy to have this, and it's got the chicken flavor in it, so I use it all the time. Okay, I've got that on kind of high, and not paying attention to it has they're quite toasted already. So I'm gonna just turn that down for a few minutes while I am making the sauce. Okay, so what I'm gonna put in for the sauce, and I'm gonna do this all in a cup because sometimes some of the ingredients that I'm gonna put in might be a little lumpy, and I don't want them lumpy in my, in my jar. So I have instant milk, so powdered milk, but instant powdered milk, and I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons of that. Don't worry about writing the amounts down. I'm going to have the amounts posted in the description anyway, so that you can just copy it from there if you're interested. So the milk, and you know what, if you've got powdered milk in your house, I'm sorry, I'm not usually this Thrive or this brand specific, but there is no better instant milk than that one. If you haven't tried it, then you're in for a surprise. And I'm actually going to put in some sour cream. Now, if you don't have any sour cream, don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world. But I like to put the sour cream powder in just because it adds richness. So I'm going to just put a tablespoon of that in, and then I'll put that off to the side. And then I've got a tablespoon of butter. So the butter, and that's all this is just butter. So I'm going to just do 1 tablespoon of butter, but I'm going to do a heaping. Well, you know what? I already put butter in there, so I won't do heaping. So the butter, and then the velouté. And the velouté is, what do I do with my measuring cup? Is I'm going to do 1/3 of a cup. Oh, I know what I did. I used it for water, so now so 1/3 of a cup is actually 6 tablespoons. So I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so 6 tablespoons of the velouté. Or if you wanted to use that cream sauce, you would do the same thing. So the velouté has got chicken bouillon in it. It's got milk in it, and it's probably got sour cream powder in it, and it's probably got butter in it. So these are just adding a little bit more richness. Now I'm stirring it around so that I don't have any lumps. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that, normally when I do meals in a jar, the first time I use the recipe, I do 1 in the pot and then 1 in the jar. And so what I have got in this, the very bottom layer, that's what I just did. That's that bottom layer. And then here I've got the onions, and here I've got the carrots. So we're just gonna catch up on that. So I'm gonna, oh, you can see that. So I'm gonna dump that in. I'm gonna make a nice cream sauce, and I'm gonna be prepared to put in a little bit more water. Those carrots are gonna be perfect right now. They'll be ready for everything else. All right, so let's put a little bit more water in that. And we'll turn it back up again. So if you were gonna make a chicken pot pie soup, then you would just dump everything in a pot. I'm actually gonna make a chicken pot pie, and I'm gonna put it in the oven. And normally I would put, you know what, I grew up on chicken pot pie. That was one of our favorites, and my mom always put pastry on the top and the bottom. That's my absolute favorite. I don't have time to make pastry today. So I'm gonna put a cornmeal, like a cornbread mix on top. It'll be the next best thing. Okay, so after that, I'm gonna put in, what I put in the jar was the chicken and then the peas. So here's the chicken, and that's just chopped chicken, freeze-dried, of course. So put the chicken in, and then I'm going to put the peas in. That's like 1 cup of the chicken, 1/3 of a cup of the peas. And then while that is just sitting here simmering, I'm going to do the seasoning. Now, you know what? I'm not going to say there are no wrong ways and no right ways of making a meal in a jar. There are, but there aren't as many as you might think. It's a lot of it is just your personal way of doing it. So I'm going to tell you the personal way for me to do this. I always put my dried ingredients on the bottom. I know some people who put them on the top. The advantage to putting it on the top is that it'll filter down and you'll fit a lot more into the jar. I mean, that's a big advantage. But the reason I put it on the bottom is because it's pretty and I like it to look nice. Now I made an exception because I'm using all herbs from my garden. I don't have powders. Oops, turn it down a little bit. I don't have powders, so they're all just dehydrated, and I'm crumbling them up, and it ended up being like 1/3 of a cup, and I didn't want to put it on the bottom in case I ran out of room. So I put it halfway up. So what I'm using, and I would, you know what, if you don't have all these seasonings, don't worry about it. Just do whatever you've got. Sage always means poultry to me. It just, I like it. So I'm gonna just take, whoops, okay. So there's just sage from my garden, dried, and I'm gonna crumble it into a bowl. And the reason I'm doing it in a bowl and not right straight in the pan is because then there's these little twigs that I just want to be able to take out. So, and then that makes quite a bit of powder. So I've got the sage in there. I'm gonna do oregano, because also oregano seems like poultry to me. Goes with poultry in my world anyway. So I'm gonna just take a, probably if you were doing the powder, you'd end up with maybe a tablespoon of the powder. If that's what you have. If you're using the whole herb and then you're just crushing it, I guess you just kind of have to go by, just have to do whatever you think is right, I suppose. I'm gonna put in a little bit of thyme. When I made that jar, I didn't put the thyme in, I put savory in. But I'll put thyme in right now, and then I'm gonna put a little bit more parsley, and then I'm done with that. Let me give this a stir. Oh, it's beautiful. Okay, so a little bit of parsley. And I know I don't have any little branches in there, so I'll put it straight in. We'll do some more because it's nice and green. Gives it a nice, there we go. Okay, so I'm all ready. I'm just gonna put the herbs in there and then give it a stir. And I will put a little bit more water in. Okay, I measured out 6 cups of water. I don't think I'm gonna put all 6 in, but I'll just judge as I go. Okay, so that's ready to go. So now what I've got is, these are potatoes. These are freeze-dried potatoes. Now I use Thrive. You know that, I'm sure. So there are 2 different ways of having diced potatoes. One is, it says freeze-dried. Now this is an old label, but it says freeze-dried. So that is what I'm using, and just nice and soft. You can eat them. There's nothing in there but potatoes. But this one here, the potato chunks, is dehydrated and very, very different. These are very dry. This will take you probably 15-20 minutes to boil this to make it so that you're going to want to eat it. So if you're going to make like a chowder that you're going to cook for a long time, this is what you want to do. If you're going to make something that you're not going to cook for a long time, you want to use the freeze-dried. So that's what I use. All right, so I'm going to dump those in. All right, so here we are. So we've got the peas, we've got the herbs here, we've got the potatoes on top, there's the chicken, and on the very, very top, I'm putting green beans. And how many green beans? I don't even know. I just filled the rest of the jar full of green beans. And that was just because I wanted more vegetables in my dish. So if you have a favorite freeze-dried vegetable, some peppers probably, you can add anything to this, not so much to the jar. You're really limited. It's a quart jar, so you're limited on room. But if it was, since I'm doing it this way, I might be inclined to put in some kale, maybe some spinach, which I love to add to everything. But for right now, for your purposes, just because I'm doing this for you, I'm gonna add just whatever's in that jar. Okay. So I think that's enough liquid for me. If I was gonna make it into a soup, I would put in lots more, but actually I'm gonna put it in the oven, and I kinda want it to be a little bit thick. So let me just, I forgot to get a spoon. Let me just try it. Oh, I forgot to put the pepper in. You'll notice I didn't put any salt in. Whoops. And that's because there's salt in the velouté or in the white sauce that I would use. Beautiful. All right, I'm gonna put the pepper in. I'm gonna put in a lot of pepper. This is a teaspoon, and I'm gonna put in a half. So a teaspoon and a half. That's a lot of pepper, but I like pepper. And if you felt like you wanted a little bit more salt, then go ahead, add the salt. So that's it. Really, if you were gonna serve this as a soup, you'd be done by now. But I am gonna put it in, this was my dad's. I ended up with quite a few of these. So they're very special to me. I hope I never break them. If I do, I'll be very, very sad. So I'm gonna just dump this in because I want it to go in the oven. And I'm not putting a pastry on top. I'll show you what I'm putting on top. All right, so I've got everything in there. And then I took some cornbread mix. And the cornbread mix, I have actually never bought a cornbread mix in my life. So I'll show you what I got. I just made a cornbread mix. So I've got some good stuff in there. I will put a link to that recipe. If you want to make it, then it'll just be on the bottom or in the description. And so in the meantime, I'm just gonna spoon a layer of cornbread on the top. This mix is delicious, by the way. And truth be told, I'd rather have pastry. But since I don't have anybody here making the pastry for me, and I'm a little short on time, that's the story of my life. I'm always short on time. Then I'm just gonna do the next best thing. You know what else would be nice on here is like a stovetop dressing. Actually, that'd be awesome. I should have thought of that. Next time. So I just did half a recipe of that cornbread mix just because I only wanted just a topping. You know what the other nice thing to do with this cornbread mix is make waffles. That's what my daughter does, so she's kind of sold me on the idea. I love cornbread waffles. Okay, that's it. That is it. I'm gonna put that in the oven. I will show you what it looks like when I'm done. So thanks for joining me. Have a good rest of your evening. I will post a picture at the very end so you can see what the finished result is. And I'll put the recipes for the thrive or for the meal in the jar and whatever you want to do with it. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye. Hi. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. I'd love to hear about it. If you have any comments, I'd love to hear them. If you liked it, do me a favor and click the like button. If you know somebody who would benefit from it, then definitely share it with them. And if you'd like to know more about these sorts of things, then stick around.